Hello and welcome. You have tuned into World Business Report here on News 9 Live, where we get you all the latest in the world of business, economy, finance, technology, entertainment and more from all across the world. I am Krishna Kumar. We begin with tech giant Google, which has agreed to destroy billions of data records that the tech giant secretly collected from users who used the Incognito mode to browse the internet privately. And this in response to a lawsuit first filed back in the year 2020 that could require Google to pay $5 billion in damages for violations of federal wiretapping and California privacy laws in the US. The class action lawsuit covers millions of Google users who have used private browsing mode, the Incognito mode, since the 1st of June 2016. The terms of settlement were filed on Monday at a US federal court in Oakland, California, and it now requires an approval by US District Judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers. Under this lawsuit, Google will have to reveal what it collected from private browsing and also allow Incognito users to block third-party tracking cookies by default for the next 5 years. From one tech giant to another, from Google to Microsoft, which will stop packaging its Teams video conferencing app along with its Office software after the practice attracted an antitrust scrutiny. Microsoft said that customers buying the MS Office or Microsoft Office subscriptions starting this week will not get Microsoft Teams bundled along with the service. Microsoft will start selling the two products separately around the world following a move last year to separate the products in Europe. And that came after the European Union's Executive Commission, the 27-nation bloc's top competition enforcer, opened a formal investigation over concerns that bundling Teams with Office gives Microsoft an unfair edge over competitors. The investigation was triggered by a complaint filed in the year 2020 by Slack Technologies, a maker of popular workplace messaging software. Away from Microsoft to Elon Musk, who expressed concerns about the risks of artificial intelligence yet again during the Great AI Debate seminar at the Abundance Summit. Musk suggested that there is a 10 to 20% chance that artificial intelligence could pose dangers to humanity, but believes the potential benefits outweigh the risks. He emphasized the importance of teaching AI to prioritize truthfulness and curiosity, likening the process to raising a super intelligent child. Elon Musk also warned that AI could surpass human intelligence by the year 2030, urging caution regarding its potential negative consequences as well. From Musk to former US President Donald Trump, who posted a $175 million bond in his New York civil fraud case, averting asset seizures by state authorities that could have hobbled the former US president's business empire. Trump set to face Joe Biden, in the upcoming November US presidential elections, was found liable on the 16th of February this year for fraudulently inflating his net worth by billions of dollars to secure better loan and insurance terms. Trump originally needed to post a bond of $454 million, but an appeals court on the 25th of March stayed the enforcement of Justice Arthur Engoron's judgment on the condition that Mr. Trump pay the smaller sum within 10 days. Away from that to Wall Street, where stocks in the US edged lower with investor concerns over the US Federal Reserve's timing of interest rate cuts weighing on the market. This Reuters report tells you all about the action on Wall Street.
U.S. stocks edged mostly lower on Monday, dragged down by investor worries over the timing of interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve. The Dow dropped 0.6%, the S&P 500 slid 0.2%, and the Nasdaq ticked up 0.1%. Data from the Institute for Supply Management showed U.S. manufacturing grew for the first time in a year and a half in March. While that suggests a strong economy, it also suggests the Federal Reserve could delay its first interest rate cut, explains Ross Mayfield, investment strategy analyst at Baird.
You see that pop in Treasury yields because it's going to encourage the Fed that they don't necessarily need to cut, that the economy is strong in spite of their rate hikes and where rates are. So to the extent that it's pulling rate cuts off the table for 2024, you're seeing a bit of weakness in equities. But again, not all that concerning because the backdrop is it means a stronger economy.
The U.S. rate futures market was pricing in a 58% chance of a rate cut in June, down from about 64% a week ago, according to the CME's FedWatch tool. As for the day's movers, shares of FedEx fell more than 3% after rival UPS said it will become the primary air cargo provider for the United States Postal Service, as FedEx announced an end to its more than 20-year partnership with the Postal Service. Shares of Micron Technology gained nearly 5.5% after Bank of America lifted its price target on the stock. And shares of Donald Trump's Trump Media plunged 21.5%, wiping out the gains from its debut last week after disclosing millions in losses and saying it would struggle to meet its financial liabilities going forward.
Now, United Parcel Service has secured a major win as it became the primary air cargo provider for the U.S. Postal Service, following FedEx's announcement to end its more than 20-year-long relationship and partnership with the U.S. Postal Service. More in this report. Now, carmaker Renault, alongside other foreign firms, has faced substantial losses even as they exit Russia, with over $107 billion in write-offs and lost revenue documented. Approximately 1,000 companies have withdrawn from the Russian market since Moscow's invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago.
Renault is among foreign firms to take a big hit leaving Russia. A Reuters analysis of company filings and statements showed firms have seen more than $107 billion in write-downs and lost revenue. About 1,000 companies have exited the country following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago. The volume of losses has risen by 1/3 since the last tally in August last year. Moscow demands discounts of at least 50% on foreign asset sales. It's steadily tightened exit requirements and often accepts nominal sale prices of as little as 1 ruble. So far this year, sales of assets owned by Shell, HSBC, Polymetal International and Yandex have been announced. Those sales totaled nearly $10 billion and had discounts as high as 90%. Last week, Danone said it received regulatory approvals to dispose of its Russian assets, taking a loss of $1.3 billion. Western nations froze around $300 billion of the Bank of Russia's gold and foreign exchange reserves after the invasion of Ukraine. Now, Moscow has promised to retaliate against EU proposals to redistribute billions of euros in interest earned on its frozen assets. It's warned of catastrophic consequences and said any attempt to take its capital or interest is banditry. The state RIA news agency calculated the West would lose assets and investments worth at least $288 billion if Moscow retaliates, a number Reuters couldn't verify. Moscow has already taken temporary control of assets owned by several Western companies, including Carlsberg and German energy firm Uniper. But Moscow's hardline approach inflicts damage on Russia too. One lawyer and sanctions expert said a surprisingly large number of its clients had left Russia entirely. He added they would likely be reluctant to return even after hostilities end. It means useful technologies have left the country and Russia may no longer be able to support certain high-tech production in future.
Now, Australia celebrated a significant development in its trade relationship with China as Beijing announced the lifting of anti-dumping and anti-subsidy tariffs on Australian wine. The move marks the end of 3 years of tariffs, bringing relief to Australian wine producers.
Australian wine is back on the menu for China. Beijing announced Thursday it will lift anti-dumping and anti-subsidy tariffs on wine from Australia. It ends 3 years of levies and offers long-awaited relief for Australian producers. China's Ministry of Commerce spokesperson He Yadong.
Given that the situation in China's wine market has changed, the anti-dumping and anti-subsidy tariff imposed on wine imported from Australia is no longer necessary.
The tariffs of up to 218.4% were first imposed in March 2021, along with a number of other trade barriers on Australian commodities. It began after relations soured between the two countries when Canberra called for a probe into the origins of COVID-19. Ties have improved significantly since last year. China has steadily lifted trade hurdles on Australian goods ranging from barley to coal. Australian wines imported into China used to be subject to zero tariffs, but by the first half of last year, Australian wine made up just 0.14% of Chinese wine imports. Official data showed in 2020, before the duties were introduced, it was as high as 27%. The Australian government said it welcomed the outcome at a critical time for the country's wine industry.
Away from that to the newly re-elected mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem İmamoğlu. And he has emerged as the main challenger to Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's reign, following a comfortable victory in the mayoral elections. This Reuters report tells you all about it.
Newly re-elected Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu has emerged as the main challenger to Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan's reign. After clinching a comfortable victory in Sunday's mayoral elections, the affable former businessman is a potential future president, in the view of many analysts. Celebrating his victory, İmamoğlu said the nation had sent a message to Erdogan and other officials.
The nation itself gives the order and the instructions, not just one person. Officials receive instructions from the nation. The period of one-man rule is over as of today. It is done.
But in some ways, İmamoğlu is following in the footsteps of Erdogan. who ran Istanbul himself in the 1990s. They share a strong ability to appeal to voters. Both men also have family roots in the eastern Black Sea region. Both their political careers have been impeded by Turkey's courts, and both were keen footballers in their youth too. But there are crucial differences. Erdogan entered politics with the Islamist AKP party and has reshaped the secular state with his pious vision since taking the reins in 2002. İmamoğlu is from the staunchly secular Republican People's Party, or CHP. His success is that he was able to win over more conservative voters. Turkey's judiciary, civil rights and press freedoms have eroded on Erdogan's watch, critics say, charges the government denies. This was Vladimir Prebilic of the Council of Europe after they observed Sunday's elections.
More needs to be done to ensure a political and media environment where there is a genuine freedom of expression and a reasonable and well-implemented framework overseen by independent judiciary.
İmamoğlu himself has faced judicial woes. After his 2019 Istanbul win, a judge sentenced him to 2.5 years in prison, imposing a political ban for insulting public officials. The appeals court is yet to rule on the case. Last year, another court opened a case against İmamoğlu on a charge of tender rigging that carries a sentence of 3 to 7 years. Erdogan's critics see the cases as an attempt to hold İmamoğlu back, which the president and his AKP deny. While Erdogan was briefly jailed in the late 90s for reciting a poem that a court ruled incited religious hatred. Erdogan said the election defeat was a turning point and promised the party would self-critique. He bounced back to win re-election as president last year, despite widespread economic strains in Turkey, defying many polls. But İmamoğlu has now struck a new blow for the opposition.
Away from Turkey to Africa, where Janet Gyamfi, a cocoa farmer in Ghana, once tended to nearly 6,000 cocoa trees on her land, and today less than a dozen of them remain, replaced by cyanide-tainted pools of wastewater due to illegal gold mining, locally known as galamsey. This devastation, coupled with climate change and sector mismanagement, has led to catastrophic harvests, driving up global chocolate prices.
Janet Gyamfi's farm was once covered with nearly 6,000 cocoa trees. Today, less than a dozen remain, replaced by cyanide-tainted pools of wastewater. Across Ghana, cocoa plantations are ceding ground to illegal gold miners, known locally as galamsey. That's one factor that's contributing to catastrophic harvests this year, driving up the price of chocolate worldwide. But for Gyamfi, who has 4 children to support, there is a more immediate, painful impact.
We were all surviving on this as livelihood. It's not as if there's another livelihood anywhere that I can rely on. No, I've no source of income anywhere.
Ghana's Cocoa Marketing Board, COCOBOD, has said it has no up-to-date data on the scale of destruction wrought by galamsey. But its communications director, Fifi Boafo, said the impact from the number of farms being destroyed was enormous.
It's a combination of factors, but certainly if you have all these farms being lost, productivity affected as a result of illegal mining, then its impact on the industry is one we are really struggling to deal with.
Ghana and neighbouring Ivory Coast are the undisputed powerhouses of cocoa, accounting for over 60% of global supply. So when their harvests suffer, prices rise. Easter shoppers in the US are finding chocolate on store shelves is over 10% more expensive than a year ago, according to data from research firm Nielsen IQ. Chocolate makers tend to hedge cocoa purchases months in advance. That means, analysts say, the true impact will only really hit consumers later this year. Farmers, experts and industry insiders also blame the impact of climate change and sector mismanagement. And there's what many consider an existential threat: swollen shoot. It's a virus that at first reduces yields before ultimately killing trees. If infected, plantations have to be ripped out and the soil treated before cocoa can be replanted.
It will transfer the disease to
CocoaBod estimates about 1.5 million acres of plantations are now infected with swollen shoot. That compares with around 3.4 million acres of land under cocoa cultivation, a figure CocoaBod said includes infected trees that are still producing cocoa. Experts say poor harvests in Ghana and Ivory Coast could spell the beginning of the end for West Africa's cocoa supremacy. Ecuador is forecast to overtake Ghana as the world's #2 producer by 2027. Brazil and Peru could also step up. Meanwhile, it's communities like Jamfis that suffer. She says she had resisted the illegal miners' threatening demands to sell them her plantation. Then one day she arrived to find her land cordoned off, she said, armed guards blocking her path and bulldozers tearing out her trees. Like others, she's been caught in Ghana's perfect storm of disease and destruction, and had few options but to watch her livelihood be snatched away.
Can dogs understand words for specific objects? A new study suggests that they can, revealing that dogs mentally picture objects when they hear their names, just like human beings. Take a look at this.
Can dogs understand words for specific objects? A new study says yes, and that dogs picture the object in their minds when they hear its name, much like human beings. This border collie named Rohan was part of the study out of Budapest. Researchers at Eötvös Loránd University measured her brain activity as her owner said words for objects she knew.
Rohan, mira, ring.
Mariana Boros co-authored the study.
Dogs came to the lab and they didn't just listen to something that is not important for them, but they came with their own toys that they usually play with. And what happened during the experiment is that the owner showed the toy and then put it away, and then showed another toy and put it away.
18 dogs participated in the study. In some cases, the owners would present the dog with an object that matched the word.
Rohan, ¿dónde está Frisbee?
In other cases, the object didn't match.
Rohan, ¿dónde está Frisbee?
The results showed that there was a different pattern in the dog's brains when the words matched the objects compared to when they didn't, just like humans.
There has been a long debate on a non-human animal's ability to understand words referentially. Understanding the meaning of a word would mean that there is a so-called a memory of that object in the dog's mind. We call it a mental representation in psychology, and that hearing the word will activate this mental representation in the dog's mind.
Boros said the study is the first to claim the ability to understand referential language is present across the species. The researchers plan to examine if this ability is specific to dogs or might be present in other mammals as well.
And that's all we have time for on this edition of World Business Report. Thank you so much for watching. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.